afternoon, communities. Good afternoon, Ukraine. Today we organize a conference on the spatial planning in communities. For us, it's important to give answers on such issues as challenges and issues. It's our second conference, and for us it's important to understand what are our objectives in the communities. Spatial planning is a comprehensive tool on the reconstruction of communities. For us it's important to understand how they will reconstruct communities. And communities actually should address this based on the conflict we have in this country today. We start our conference and invite you, and the opening remarks will be with Mark Ellingstad. He's the director of the Office of Democracy and Governance, USAID Mission in Ukraine. The floor is open for you, Mr. Ellingstad. Дякуємо вам.
Pleasure for me to be here with you today. The issue of reconstruction is very, very important, and we're working to support Ukrainian communities to do the best planning they can so that even before the war ends, Ukraine is well prepared for recovery and reconstruction. We know that spatial planning, even in the best of times, even in normal times, is a very difficult and complex process. And of course, we're not living in normal times. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to gather together, hear from experts on what are the best practices in spatial planning, and do the best we can to create the conditions for Ukraine to build back better. Reconstruction and development should address sustainability, the environment, digitalization, economic growth, legislation, and participation. And this means that this can be a very complex process, but it's a very necessary process. The spatial plan serves as a validity criterion for accessing further assistance from the national and international community and international institutions. Recognizing that economic recovery requires significant private sector investment, the spatial plan can serve as a foundation to assure investor confidence. Spatial plans can ensure transparency of process and implementation, reasonableness of vision and outcomes, and budget realism. All these things, by contributing to good governance at the community level, also contribute to Ukraine's democratic and European future. I'm especially honored to be here today as we continue our assistance for the short, medium, and long-term challenges of Ukraine. We're very proud to have two USAID projects represented here, Hoverla and Agro, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for making this happen. USAID and the American people will continue to stand with Ukraine as Ukraine heroically defends its land, its sovereignty, its dignity, democracy, and the significant gains it has made over the past 30 years. Ukraine is fighting for democracy in Europe and the world today. We admire you very, very much. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Дуже дякуємо. Будь-яка реформа, вона починається з інституціональної.
Any reform is started with the institutional changes, and Ukraine today has adopted a large-scale package of laws related to the land. It was last year. It was a very difficult political process, and we are very proud with the fact that Ukraine goes along this path towards the reforms, system-based changes and transformations, and that is why we start with the first presentation, and the keynote presentation will be with the head of the Committee of the Parliament of Ukraine on the Agrarian and Land Policy, Alexander Gaidu. Good afternoon to everyone. It's nice to be aware that at this conference we will be discussing community development and how we will recover our communities. So the Parliament have adopted a number of land-related laws, agricultural lands, and now actually they return the right to communities, the right on the land. And for us, it's important to say that our committee worked on a number of the draft laws with the support of the program supported by the USAID. For us, it's important to understand that we should manage better all our documentation related to the urban development and community development. We understand if we do this, we could work much better, but unfortunately the war has stopped many of the processes. Lots of activities now stopped, but from the beginning of the war our community works on the draft laws address on such issues as ensuring the food security. We understand that in the battlefields we have very many challenges to meet, but in the level of communities, we should also challenges which we should address: recultivation of lands, demining, rebuilding of the infrastructure and housing. Spatial planning will be the instrument that will assist addressing and resolution of these issues based on the system-based approach. Today, we will be talking over such issues, what instruments to be transferred to the communities in order to resolve these issues. We are, as the parliamentarians, are ready to work closely with all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Also, we actually understand that today such a very important package of laws is almost ready, and we hope that the Parliament will give a sound support to this process. Now the floor is open to one of the authors of a line of laws on the spatial planning. We now trying to improve this law, and today this MP actually was the person who launched very many sound ideas with regards to spatial planning. Olena Shuliak, she is the deputy chair of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on the Organization of State Power, Local Self-Government, Regional Development and Urban Planning. Well, my greetings to you, esteemed participants and representatives of communities. Actually, I'm in Vinnytsia region today, that's why I cannot join you in Kiev. Actually, from the time the war has started, actually it is our second opportunity to get together in order to discuss the issue on the spatial planning. On the 26th of May, we had an event together with the Agro-USAID supported program, and we discussed the spatial planning, how to transfer the best practices and invite recommendations. And actually the request was made in order to organize the pilot project at the level of the community and the level of the rayon in order to show how this could work. We are pleased to mention that today Agro program and project and Gaverla project gave us a strong support in the territory in Chernigiv region. This community, Kiev community, it suffered a lot. It was much affected by the hostilities, and I believe that this project is very timely. I'm very happy that such pilot projects are actually supported by the Ministry of Regions and Community Development, and it's very good, but it is also supported by Geocadastre State Agency. For us, it's important to mention that over the 6 months of war, we actually adopted a number of legislation acts that will support businesses in relocation efforts. For them will be much easier to get all the necessary permits to construct temporary housing. And also we have adopted a number of documents that will allow to address logistics problems and will address infrastructure programs. The project 2254 actually addresses the first priority actions at the level of communities. This project allowed us to address the issues I have numbered earlier. And it's also important to mention that for us, very important to find the best reasonable way to address these issues. For us, it's important to take into account such issues as corruption in order to minimize the corruption effects. For us, it's important actually to develop the instrument that will could address specifically this or that problem, and actually will describe step-by-step actions that should be in place. For us, it's very important to get back to the comprehensive planning of territories. We planned to do it before the wartime, and we are ready to address the issues with regards to subventions on reconstruction of communities, and we are ready actually to introduce some amendments that will be very timely for the processes that we have today with regards to the spatial planning in Ukraine. Really, for us, it's important to mention that with the support of Agrarian guerrilla projects, actually, if we work closely with the expert community, with the community members, we could do this very soon, and then we will be ready to trial them at the level of the pilot projects that are in place, and actually to reload the process of spatial planning in communities. For us, it's important that our actions will be a powerful signal for our partners. I would like to thank you, all of you, wish you fruitful work at our conference. Thank you very much, Mrs. Olena. Actually, today we will be discussing all the changes to be included in the current legislation with regards to the spatial planning, and it will be a sound instrument for the reconstruction of communities. Lots of discussions will take place, and we understand that for us it's important to have all these changes, and these changes will be submitted to the Parliament, and we believe that you, MPs, will give us the support in this regard. I wish you a fruitful mission. And now the floor is opened for other participants of our conference. For us, it's important that today our conference actually is hosted by the two projects supported by the USAID, and we understand that spatial planning is a very critical topic for the communities. So the director of the USAID Agro project, Ksenia Sidorkina, the floor is open for you, Mrs. Ksenia.
Thank you, Sergey. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of USAID Agro Program, I am very grateful to welcome you on this conference, and I'm very thankful for participation. It's a great pleasure for me and great honor to work with the Gavrila project together, and I'm very happy that other participants and stakeholders are actively participating in our work for renewal of the territories and communities. I would like to thank my colleague Elena for constant support and work in this field. Previously we met at the presentation of pilot projects in Kharkiv region, and it's a great pleasure for me that the program is currently active. This is a part of the emotional component of our work, because USAID Agro project started within the framework of several pilot projects before the relevant legislation was adopted, actually, because we understand that we need a complex approach actually to the solving of the problem. Now we have the situation when the legislation is almost completed. Actually, all moments were taken into account, all amendments were adopted. And when the agricultural market opened, actually our program was still supporting several projects for the further work. We had several technical specifications, actually, in order to develop the complex plans and to develop the strategic assessment. We understand that the war has changed many of our plans. We know that certain communities were destroyed partially or completely, and some of them were forced to accept IDPs and refugees, actually. We know that certain programs were blocked, in fact, and temporarily some registers and cadastres were suspended. We understand that we now use under the martial law, in fact, and the certain regulations are not working, and it doesn't allow us to actually continue our work in certain directions. And sometimes we have problems with IDPs, but still we understand that during the renewal of our country we will solve these problems. But right now we should think about it, to contemplate on it, and to understand what should be done in the future, how the regulations and legal norms will work in the future, what should be done in the ecological field, in sustainable development, and other sectors. So we should speak about practical aspects. We should teach our students, our specialists in many fields, and of course provide legal support in certain aspects. This is the new page of our development, the new page of our history, in fact. So Agro program, and together with Gavrila program, we'll do everything that we can and everything that is possible in order to provide sustainable development to our communities. I'm very thankful for your participation, and we should think about what should be done in order to support our territorial communities. I wish you fruitful work today. Thank you very much, Ksenia. That was very interesting. We understand, in fact, that we should speak not about the prospects that we have, but also about the risks and challenges that we face right now, and what should be done in order to overcome such challenges. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mr. Gabriel Abraham, head of the USAID Gavrila project.
Colleagues, partners, and friends, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm especially honored to be here in Kiev today with our partners to be able to discuss this very, very important topic, which is complex spatial planning. This topic is very relevant in the reconstruction and reconstruction planning for the future of Ukraine. Healthy spaces and livable communities and vibrant communities is a core service of local governments, and by extension, one of the principal areas of the Hoverla activity. Vibrant communities start with the development of a spatial plan, and for this, Hoverla is devoting many resources focusing on this very topic. Today, during the period of upheaval, dislocation, and reconstruction planning, spatial planning is more relevant than ever before. With the unprovoked Russian aggression, Ukrainian municipalities are facing a lot of new challenges that they have not encountered before. This raises many issues which require immediate action and more importantly, timely decisions. Where to build housing for the internally displaced population? Where to place relocated businesses? Where to establish social infrastructure? What does urban space look like in the 21st century? What should be done to address society that is increasingly digital? What does mobility look like? These and other challenges are faced by communities all across Ukraine. The Comprehensive Spatial Plan is the instrument by which communities will be able to make balanced and effective decisions considering their available resources that they have currently and in the future. Most importantly, complex spatial planning allows communities to make data-based decisions. USAID Hoverla responded to the demands from the regional government as well as from municipalities for support in developing complex spatial planning documentation. Thus, our experts work closely with the partner communities to support them in creating the efficient plans for their territories. The spatial planning process and end result is a significant element of citizens' engagement, as it will also engage the community in the planning process. It is multidisciplinary, taking into account legislation, urban design, finance, security, transportation, and efficiencies. It will be reflective of their current and forecasted realities and resources. Most importantly, it will serve as a foundation process in the reconstruction, and on this issue, it's not too soon to start. We are immensely proud to see how Ukrainian municipalities fight for their freedom and for the well-being of their residents, as the municipalities are truly at the forefront of this invasion. USAID Hoverla will continue supporting Ukrainian people in their efforts. This meeting today brings some very key partners involved in this activity, and I trust the discussion will be very fruitful as we go this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Дякуємо, Габріель.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Now we are at another stage of our progress, and we are very proud that you are present here today and you support us in our efforts in order to renew our country. Thank you very much. I would like to now to address all people who are watching us in YouTube. You can ask any questions, whatever. We will see your questions in the chat, and we will try to answer any question that you have. So we do believe that our discussion would be very fruitful and to answer any complex questions coming from communities. So please do not hesitate to write in the chat. So please just do it. How spatial planning can be used for restoration of the communities, of the territories. It concerns the occupied territories and the whole territory of Ukraine in general. We will discuss all aspects of the reform, and at present we are in the active phase of the reform, and I would like to show you the video about the ongoing reform and what we have achieved so far, and then we will proceed to another panel session. Thank you, Anna. The 1st of July, it was 1 year when the agricultural market actually opened. This reform returned, in fact, the right to land property and provided transparency for all our citizens, for our agrarians and communities, and stimulated GDP development in our country. It helped to fight corruption in Ukraine, and communities became the owners of their own lands. Despite Russian aggression, the land market is still working. We have the right to land and protected the Ukrainian land from the aggression. We will still be working in this field, of course, and we will provide food security in the future. So this is our European future.
Итак,
Well, we'll start our panel discussions. So we have 450 representatives of communities with us. The first panel will be with the spatial planning and at the level of communities. So here we will have the chairs of the heads of the communities. Also, I will actually introduce all our speakers, and I'd like to remind you that all your questions are welcome. And the floor is opened for the head of the all-Ukrainian community, head of the Kiptevska community in Chernihiv Oblast, Volodymyr Kuchma. Actually, he has already tested the instruments of spatial planning, and he did it back to 2016. And it's important actually for us to know how they worked. This community was much affected in hostilities. The floor is opened for Mr. Kuchma. Thank you, dear guests, for the invitation. I actually agree to all my colleagues who are with us, who actually are us in the time of hardships. And for us, it's important to say that really we have a real time of hardships. I'd like retroactively to describe you what happened in 2017 at the level of Kiptiv community, where we first in Ukraine launched the project on land surveying. We did not name the project Spatial planning project, but we decided to have a revision of the land at the level of community. Our community is based in the Agrarian territories, areas, and for us it's important to understand how could we be effective at the level of community. In order to address this activity, lots of organizational efforts to be in place, to talk to all who have a good knowledge, who represent the expert community, and who could help us to address these issues. On this slide, actually, you can see 6 months was the period given to us in order to reconsider our documents. First of all, it was important for us to see what are the margins at the level of the community. We actually we had to prepare all the documentation, also to organize meetings with the stakeholders, with all those who live in this territory or those who are engaged in agribusinesses. I should say for you that it's sort of a patient work, and at the level of community there was a feeling of responsibility, and they were very devoted to this process. We have passed this timing, and now we actually have a very good understanding what we have done, what are the outcomes of all these activities. On the map you may see we have a very good vision what lands at the level of communities we have, actually what are the land margins, and for the people living in the rural areas, always they know that they have fields and forests, but there are also water resources, that there are also some other different parts, types of lands, and for us it was very important to address all these issues and to have the understanding how we could do better when we work with all the lands. Actually, for us it was very important to provide necessary accountability related to the land. Actually, what are the abandoned lands, what are the forest lands, and actually the activities with regards to the future activities were in place, and now we see the number of lands, of agricultural lands and foreign lands. Now we have a much better idea who owns these lands, and for us it's important that with this tool we have a better vision what can we do more effectively at the level of community. You understand that the state cadastre, actually some lands were transferred to our communities, and before they were outside our community. And actually reserve lands also were increased by 1,000 hectares of land, and actually for us it's very important. Also, it's important to mention that we increased the budgets due to these efforts, and by 2 million hryvnias we actually and we did much better. And now we understand that we could use these lands actually in order to do our work more effectively. But 2022, February 24th, is actually the day that has dramatically changed our community. You may see on the pics what has happened in our community. Lots of devastations. Our community area was not occupied, but we have lots of damages, infrastructure damages. We have lots of casualties. We understand that life is life. We should live, and we should have a clear vision how we will be implementing spatial planning and what will be the outcome of this process and how our community will live. It's a sort of a very complex time, difficult time. For me as a head of the community, it's not an easy time. And we are very interested in such issue as people's security in the time of hostilities. Nobody could guarantee that enemies will get back. But Kiptiv community is located 90 kilometers from the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. And I'd like to address representatives of the government to our to the people, to the stakeholders, that they should address such issue as security. Also, shelter facilities are very important because, or basement facilities, they're very important. We have something very simple, but it cannot provide security of our population. I'd like to address you. Please help us with this issue, how we could provide sound basement facilities. We understand that after signing today's agreement, it will be the start-up point. It will give us the impetus for the implementation of Gaverla and Agra program. Thank you very much. We will have some questions for you. Actually, you were the first, you were the pioneer who actually did these activities related to spatial planning. We understand that you introduced some corrections to the data you had, and the floor is opened to the representative Evgen Plashenko. He's director of the Department of the Ministry of Community and Regional Development. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation at this conference. Back to 2021. Actually, starting from 2020, we had a number of changes with regards to the approaches to the spatial planning. And the perspective was very clear, logic, and well thought. But 24th of February 2024 actually brought lots of changes to our life, and all in all, the entire situation changed, also including spatial planning. We understand today, these actions on spatial planning should be in the focus of our attention, because now many communities should be reconstructed, and territory planning, community development, communities development. These are the issues that should be in our focus. The law has been adopted already, and this law addresses the issues on necessary that it's important to have the basement facility to provide and ensure people's security and community at the level of the community, and this is acknowledged by all the stakeholders. But for us, it's important also to understand it should not be treated as a sort of an individually taken activity, but it should fully fit in the overall community development program. Actually, you have mentioned that the enemy is very close, and actually, the account taking on this, we should work on these issues that we have been discussing with the account taking of the threat on the part of the Russia. Of the Agrarian guerrilla programs, we work very actively, and we believe that not probably at a time we will find all the answers to all the questions we have, but certain solutions will be proposed, no doubt, with regards to spatial planning at the level of community. We understand that actually before 2024, February 24th, we had completely different challenges. Today, lots of concept has been changed because actually the vision of what should happen have changed dramatically. In your opinion, what are the most critical changes that have taken place after February 24 when we're talking over the issue of spatial planning? It's true that it has been already mentioned, but I'd like to mention as well that today we have lots of changes in the entire territory of Ukraine. We don't it does not relate only communities, but also we have the territories that are currently occupied. We have very many people who are IDPs today. Business relocation and company relocation, it's also another effort made by all of us in order to reconstruct. All the reconstruction should be done in a completely new quality. And this should be taken into account at the level of planning and designing. We are very thankful agro and guerrilla programs because reconstruction of the new quality of life for the Ukrainians is fully fits the issue of spatial planning. Maybe some people disagree this, but visualization of what of all the processes related to reconstruction will much help you to have the sound planning for 3 years period up front, and because we should do human-centrally planning, and it's a very important topic. We understand demography changes because the population living in this or that territory today should be taken into account. The quality of life and level of life should be adequately provided to the community, to the people in communities. And now the floor is opened to the head of Mezhitska community, Dnipro Oblast. This community actually is very close to Zaporizhia region, and before this community was the community who participated in the Pioneer Spatial Planning Project. The floor is open to Volodymyr Zrazhevsky, head of the Mezhevskaya community, and he will share his experience with us and the heads of our other communities. And
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Our today's meeting is very important because it gives us new incentives to our communities with regard to special development. Thank you for your support and. Our community actually is located in Dnipropetrovsk region. We have a rather complicated situation starting from 2014. The situation has seriously deteriorated, and in our work we are guided by actually the conditions and situation that we have. Special development is a rather important tool, I would say, and we have serious conditions to believe that it would allow us to attract investments and to overcome the problems that we have. I would like to thank the MPs Olena and Oksana, and I would like to thank our ministry and our colleagues that provide support to our communities. And starting from 2020, they initiated many legislation amendments and developments that allow to use special development for communities and to develop further. I would like to say that our way to develop the complex plan was very difficult. We accepted the strategy of our development and the concept of special development. The Connection School provided also support for us and the relevant documentation in order to attract the investments and funds. Then, of course, we initiated investment programs, and our colleagues also helped us to develop the communities and allowed us to develop the strategy and geoportal, which that was the very essential tool for land management and land surveying. It improved the trust in our community, actually, because the tool was very transparent and the documentation was worked out, and it allowed many investors actually to come to us and help us with their funds. Actually, before the laws were adopted on special development, on land surveying and building and construction, we actually elaborated the package of documents that allowed us to implement our plans into life. And the plans were very ambitious, I would like to say. In Dnipropetrovsk region, it allowed us to attract subventions and funds in order to develop the complex plan of special development. The work started in the beginning of the year, and our partners and colleagues have mentioned that the beginning of the war actually substantially influenced our plans, but this is not the cause for us to stop. We should have no time for a respite. We should not stop at the present. Part of the work is already done, actually, and having such an opportunity and knowing that Elena Shulyak is listening to us, Director of the Department of the Ministry of Community Development. I would like to address her actual subvention that was transferred to communities under certain legal guarantees should in any case be excluded. We need such funds actually. Unfortunately, not every community has a possibility to work with the guerrilla project and have sufficient funds and resources. Of course, there are certain communities that have chosen their own way and to review their own budgets, but now we have such an opportunity. But unfortunately, sometimes they do not have sufficient funds to work. But there should be no let up, and I do believe that the work will be completed successfully. What we have right now, what challenges do we have, starting from the military aggression on behalf of the Russian Federation? The priorities have changed, the plans have changed, of course. We have migration of the population, which is very active. We pay great attention to IDPs and their problems because they need attention. They need employment, they need housing, they have many problems. We can speak about military means and actions because otherwise the community would not be able to function properly. And of course, the change of priorities in agricultural regions adjacent to the places where the active military actions are underway. In our territories, for instance, we should find certain industrial measures in order to provide our budget with the necessary funds in order to satisfy the needs of our community and communities which are located in neighboring regions in order to restore the territories and to rebuild our country. Of course, logistics is very important. Also, now we are oriented to the west, of course, and we understand that the main movement, road movement and transport movement is oriented to the west, so we should take it into account. So as a result, we have the trust of the investors, the trust of the communities, of the people, because of course investors would put their money in the projects that have support of the community, which are necessary to the communities. We expect the attention of the investors to the projects determined by the communities, in fact. And I do believe that the complex plans would simplify the procedure in general. We have land plots that have target use actually, and they do not require actually many money actually. We would have target use of the land parcels. We will have environmental zones determined, and investors would not have actually to waste their time to make additional jobs. So investors would have the possibility to come to us easily and work transparently without wasting their time, without different complicated schemes. So that is why we elaborate this complex plan of spatial development. And so what we are talking about today is a plan or a document, and my colleagues would probably agree, which would be the basis for the state and community to work. And I do believe that communities that have this complex plan should obtain investments, because this complex plan was initiated from the community itself, from the people, and it has its right to life. So that was my brief comment actually on our topic. Thank you, Mr. Volodymyr. really, the complex plan is a tool for attracting investment, and it should be done in such a way for the donors and investors to compete actually who will be working in this or that region. We are only starting this talk, in fact, and the work is not a cause actually to stop this work. We had many problems with the cadastre actually. We had certain restrictions, and the team of experts and organizations were working on these problems, and it would be solved. But we should have certain incentives in order to proceed with our work. And of course, we wish you all the best, and we may have some questions to you in the chat. But now I would like to give the word to Tatiana Goncharuk, head of Belokrenitska community of Rivne Oblast, and to tell about the problems with IDPs. Maybe you also have current problems. So please, you are given the floor. Thank you very much for this chance to talk to you at this meeting. I'm from Rivne region, Belogrenitska community, which is located in a very beautiful, picturesque place. We are 7 kilometers away from the oblast center on Kiev-Chop roadway. Our community, of course, had plans, but unfortunately the war has disrupted them. On the slide, you can see the proceeds from up to September of last year, now up to date. We have the lack of funds in the amount of 3 million. And of course, it was affected by the war. The main donors of our budget are the land tax and the single tax. Starting from beginning of the war, our community actually accepted IDPs. We have about 700 of them. All families were hosted by the families. Our church, which you can see on the slide, also hosted the families on the basis of our community. All IDPs, in fact, as my colleague said, actually were hosted. They became the full members of our community. They hope for our support, and they want to live a decent life. Our social protection department pays great attention to their problems.
And we register IDPs, we provide them with the social allowances, we provide them with the hygiene packs, medical packs, and actually we allow them much better comfortable living. For us, it's important to mention that together with the Prince Ostrowski charity organization, we have invited a number of ladies, and they also, these people invited also IDPs to this process. They bake bread for the Ukraine soldiers, and people understand that they are integrating in the community, and we provide them the overall support. With regard to businesses which could be invited to our region, our geography could have some benefits and disadvantages. Actually, in our community, we found two parcels of land. One is 4 hectares, and here we would like to invite businesses to this land parcel. This land is located in a small town, and they could invite a good, effective business. Also, in the another village, Bila Krynica, we have all the necessary connections, and also they could provide and could invite business in relocation. Also, we work on the Spatial plan effort, and also we have developed the strategy on community development, and we hope that our future reconstruction and recovery also will take place, and thanks to the government activity, we are actively engaged in this process, and I hope that this strategy on spatial planning will be a very good instrument, and this will allow us to cope with all the hardships that we face today in the time of hostilities. Thank you very much. Also, very good decisions were made in this community. We wish you go ahead in this process, and the government will give you a strong support in future. And now we will have a very interesting presentation. Actually, this is the presentation from the Ministry of Agrarian Policy. I invite to the floor Denis Bashlik. He is a Deputy Minister of Agrarian Policy and Food. And Denis is the government official, the person who worked in this cadastre, and actually he did his work successfully, and he's exactly the person who strongly supported the transfer of the lands in the community ownership, and actually he's a very active person in the process. And we will now invite Denis Bashlik, and thank you very much for the introduction. For me, it's very important to mention that the progress that we see today after the 3 years effort when we launched the spatial planning activity, at that time, actually very many people did not have understanding what is spatial planning, but now we understand that communities now have a much better understanding, and they strongly support it. What is a comprehensive spatial planning plan, and what is the content of this document? Formation and implementation of the state agrarian and land policy without communities is not possible, as well as ensuring food security. Unfortunately, after the 24th of February 2022, we have very many changes. The Ministry of Agrarian Policy and Food of Ukraine actually was a strong supporter on the changes in the level of community with regards to the land transfer. And for us, it's important that we also supported very many projects related to the land issues. It's important to mention that with every law we adopt, actually for us more important and more critical how to do this effort on spatial planning. We should say that the land reform is ongoing today, and I have planned slightly different my presentation, but 2 days ago in the first reading, some 75, 78 the draft law was adopted, and actually it's a part of the land reform initiated by the president, and this law actually will introduce very many changes with regards to the land. The permanent use of land will be transferred to the lease of land, and due to these we can stop lots of corruption in this land, in the sphere of land, because when we have the land use concept, we realize that around this topic there are lots of corruption. In order to get a better control of this issue, it's important, and that's why the role of all these plans will be enhanced with the time when this draft law will be adopted as a law. Also very important, but all the processes that took place after the 24th of February, also for certain timing, we suspended operation of our land cadastre, and we worked on a more secure mode because we realized that we are living in the time of martial law. We realized that for us it's very important to have the victory, and we realized that thanks to our soldiers and officers, this time will come soon. That's why for us it's important also to make a strong contribution, because to provide the readiness at the level of community to introduce all the changes with regards to spatial planning. In the context of the community development, I would like to mention 4 items, and they have already planned, and they are included in the policy of reconstruction of Ukraine. That is air surveying, and it's very critical topic, we realize, because all the actual data that will be in use with communities, they will be their critical data, because today we operate with the data a bit obsolete. They were collected 10 years ago. Land monitoring, rehabilitation and recultivation of land, of agricultural lands. I'd like to thank Vladimir Vladimirovich. He showed us what happened at the level of community. His community was not occupied, but we realized that there were lots of damages at the level of this community, and recovery and rehabilitation is very critical, and we should get ready in order right after the victory we will make a strong leap ahead in this topic. For us it's important also to talk over the issue of infrastructure and housing, because initially it was planned that we had lots of planning with regards to infrastructure. A number of years have not been, we have not focused our attention on this issue. Without development of this such a system, we will not have the strong chain in ensuring food security. And second, the fourth is the preparation of comprehensive plans for all communities in Ukraine. Because given what has been said by the previous speakers, we understand what these plans include. That's why for us it's important to focus on this as well. All these plans, implementation is critical, and it can be done only in case when we will simplify all the procedures. And we are, as a ministry in the government, we will work on this, because capacities in communities, capabilities of the instruments available with them is very important for us, and we understand what the effect we have in the economy in case when we have the comprehensive spatial planning. We have lots of this as an instrument. We have lots of data, and the communities understand how to work with the perspective for the future, not only with perspective for 1 year. And thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis. And I'd like now also actually State Cadastre Agency and Ministry of Agrarian Policy, we would like to thank you for your efforts during the Mata War. We realized by the State Cadastre did not work from the very beginning of the Russian invasion, but we understand that it was a very sound decision in order not to allow the chaos in this sphere. The cadastre did not work, but Ukraine showed that in the time of hostilities, land relations are secure and the land market operates successfully. So we would like to thank all our partners in the State Cadastre Agency and all others who contributed a lot, and the fact that you have initiated the law 75/78. It's also very important, but it will be the second important step after stopping the land moratorium. And today we realize that all these will allow to have a more transparent transactions in the land sphere. So we would like to thank you the successful work in this regard. We fully support this draft law, and if we have questions to you, then probably we will have question and answer session later. But now we have some questions in our chat. The first question is to Vladimir Vladimirovich, because you were one of our first speakers. Vladimir Vladimirovich, how you plan to take into account the destiny of IDPs when you prepare your comprehensive spatial plan? Do you plan that they will get back to their homeland, or whether they will stay in your community? Thank you very much for this question. Dear colleagues, dear participants, this issue to all the representatives who are with us at this conference here, at this meeting to have. This is the people's destinies, and they actually were in hardships and they were forced to fly. The point is that very many of them actually left not only their regions, they left Ukraine, but very many IDPs are in our community. So they have all the rights of the citizens of Ukraine. So we should secure their fully fledged quality living at the level of our community is our task. We should fully support them, and we should provide them the environment in which they will live with us. We understand this is a critical topic for very many communities, because very many communities, they host IDPs, and we realize that very many IDPs will stay in communities for a long time. And now the question from the Ministry of Regional Community Development. In order to have the effective planning of the community level territories, it's important also to understand what will be the role of this or that community. Because today, when we plan the community efforts for the future, including certain defense-related efforts, here there is not a very good understanding at the level of community. For us, it's important to understand actually what has been done at the level of the ministry.
Well, in certain cases, we can speak about formal approach to the cities, and this is the formal requirement when we speak about urban development, the building and construction, and here we can speak about certain questions to administrations who are responsible. Of course, we provide additional requirements at the stage of formation of state interests. The emergency services, actually agencies, envisaged certain provisions concerning protection of the population. It is very important, in fact, and I started to talk about amendments to the state construction norms, civil protection norms, engineering section of certain documentation. So if we speak about security issues, so we know that until this time we elaborated two sections of urban development documentation for peaceful time and for special time, military time that we have today. Of course, they should not be distinguished and divided. Of course, we should foresee and envisage all events that can happen and to plan whatever happens in our community. Of course, today we are dealing with the national interests issues, including in the context of security issues. Thank you very much. Another question. What is done in the ministry in order to support the communities by subventions and financing? Well, here I would like to say, first of all, that our colleagues from communities would confirm the fact that subvention that was distributed in 2021 actually was used, and only one community has concluded the agreement on elaboration of the complex plan, but many of the communities plan to do the same. In the previous year, it was a transitional period. But speaking frankly, at present, our funds are used firstly for military needs, and we know it. So provision of subventions is very important issue, but it requires additional consideration and additional possibilities and availability of the budget for the next year, and taking this into account, we would speak about our future plans. But you can require donors, investors, and help and assistance from them. We are cooperating with you for a long time. Right now, I think that, of course, we will discuss it later, but now we are introducing the renewal restoration programs when we are trying to attract our partners and different organizations, but together with this, we initiate many requests, but we believe that in the budget for the next year, the certain articles would be provided. Thank you very much. The ministry is working efficiently. Okay. The question for Denise as a specialist, and the question is, while we do not have cartographic documentation right now, the issue is very problematic. We know that the skies are closed actually, and we have technical problems with cartographic issues. When we speak about this question, it is not very urgent right now, but the question is about the urgency of updating the state cadastre, whether the data from the cadastre can be used right now, and whether this data is legally effective right now while developing complex plans in terms of cartographic aspect. Yes, of course, the issue is rather important because in order to develop plans, we should use official sources. Of course, today the cadastre, official cadastre, is the only source that has cartographic data which is necessary for elaboration of complex plans. We should bear in mind that the cadastre is a geoinformational system which contains many data concerning land plots, about their target use, about their location, and any other data which is required. So this information is always updated. At present, of course, we have certain problems with the cartographic data, and Sergei has already said that it should be renewed, but we cannot say that the data is obsolete. It is updated. Many countries do the same, actually. Somebody uses open source resources. Somebody is using certain measures, including photography, for instance, from air. So we have the single cadastre which has all the necessary official data in order to make complex plans. Thank you very much. The next question to Mr. Volodymyr. Do you have lands which are used for military purposes, for instance, for defense structures and fortifications? Well, this is a separate question, actually. Taking into account the questions that are being asked, I understand that we have high level of our meeting, and it's great honor for me to participate. Taking into account this, I would like to thank my colleague, because Denis, I have heard about him many times. Thank you very much for support, and the cartographic basis that we have in the cadastre is sufficient, quite sufficient right now, in order to provide a special development, and I do believe it cannot harm it or impede our future development. Speaking about fortifications, I do believe that we will speak about it later, about our victory, well, after our victory. It would be a component of our success. Thank you very much. for your question, economic question. In fact, there are certain cases, and it's very interesting. What do you do with the land tax and payments? Do you have any practice of solving the related problems? This is the question to Denise and other colleagues. We are not speaking about location, but what are the ways of solving this problem? I understand your question. We know that on the legislative level, this issue is not resolved right now. It is included in the list of territories where the military actions are being waged. But of course, we envisage that the land tax should be paid and maybe some reimbursement for it would be guaranteed. We have discussions with our relevant bodies. Now, we do not have such land plots, but of course, the land tax should be paid in full scope. Thank you very much. Now, the question to other speakers. To Denise, Tatiana, probably you would comment on it. What should be done with the lands which are actually, as a result of war, are not used for agricultural purposes? The question is correct about land tax. We have the relevant law which regulates such issues. It was adopted yesterday. I would like to recommend to read it. And this issue is very political and very urgent, but I do believe that this law would be effective and provide the relevant tools for resolving the problem. I would like, yes, of course, we would expect the comments from the ministry. Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. The question to Tatiana. What are your plans about economic issues, how they can be applied to resolution of the problems of the communities, concerning demographic aspects, for instance, and how do you take into account the economic aspect? Yes, analyzing the problems of IDPs. Part of them actually decided to stay for a long period of time. So our task is to find the relevant place for them. We have good experience. We have remote villages actually, and some IDPs have cooperated, for instance, and opened the technical maintenance station, started their business. Some dentists from Lugansk Oblast are now looking for a place to live and where to start their business. Speaking about land issues, our community is unique because the whole community, actually, Belokrenitska community, actually belong to the Agrarian institution, actually, for testing purposes. And if we succeed and actually the lands would have their manager, successful manager, actually, we would have certain land plots that would be useful not for only those groups of the population who receive some benefits, but also for those who will return from war, soldiers. They would also have some benefits, and for IDPs. But unfortunately, the issue is not solved right now. Speaking about the lands of Academy of Agrarian Sciences. So these are the lands of permanent use, probably.
The question to Yevgen. There are a number of questions. One of the questions is provoking. Today, according to our laws that are prepared by the Ministry of Regional Development, we have also the comprehensive programs on recovery and reconstruction. What is the difference between different documents that focus on this topic? In order to get funds at the level of community, how all this should work? Actually, the questions that are asked, it's not they are asked not for the first time, and let's say that here we have development strategies. They have been prepared all the time, and also we have the reconstruction recovery program, and here, for us, it's important that under this, we should have the baseline data on which we should work with the reconstruction programs. These programs is not the urban development documentation, it's the baseline input data, and we invite partners and we are ready to work directly with the communities on preparing such programs. And we say that it is natural to update the information that will be the fundamental documentation used for the urban development purposes. Because, as I said, very many changes have taken place, and it pertains all the communities. In many cases, this program could show feasibility of the planning efforts for the purposes of the long-term development. We understand that we have populated the settlement that is heavily damaged or ruined, and given the demographic changes, also we should foresee feasibility of reconstruction in the format as it is. Actually, with this in view, analytics should be developed and these reconstruction programs to be prepared in order to have such a status from which we could use strategies, long-term, mid-term, that today also are in place. But so these strategies could be also could be planned from the time when we have already elaborated the comprehensive plans. And for us, it's important to understand whether it's necessary to revise all these documents, or it is possible only to update and revise one document. You understand it's a sort of a provoking question, because according to our legislation, we have reconstruction programs and reconstruction plans, and reconstruction programs, it's a sort of a voluntary based effort on the level of community. With regards to the plan, it's programs, it's the mandatory strategic document. But we understand that we have been preparing strategies for a number of years, and unfortunately today what is the status when we take the strategies versus the reconstruction programs, what is the status of these interaction for me very difficult to comment on, but for us it's important to have a sound efforts that will provide for the efficient growth and development at the level of community. We should provide certain justifications with these programs because they will have a good vision how they will use all the lands. We understand that the comprehensive plan includes all these. And for us, it's important that there should be a good balance between the effort on program preparation and plan preparation and implementation. There is a number of questions to Dennis. And first of all, for us, it's important to understand, are you planning to introduce certain changes, whether there will be any reimbursement of the spatial, comprehensive spatial planning programs for the communities. We understand that we don't have lots of resources, but for us it's important that for us, it's important to understand where to take money. There is a good concept with regards to these costs, and we understand very future we will have a very good vision. For us, it's important to understand how we will use these resources. When we have proposals from communities, we will have a better understanding, because for a number of years, we have lots of resources placed on the accounts, and maybe these resources could be used for the spatial planning effort. And for us, it's important to understand if you could provide a one-touch effort access to the state cadastre data. If we say, if you speak about communities. Because, you know, for us it's important to have a one-touch activities. We understand that the information in the state cadastre before was closed. And for us, it's important to understand that the state cadastre data from the beginning of the war was closed for a certain period. But today, not every entity and persons have the open access to the state cadastre data. Quite recently, 2 weeks ago, being more exact, we actually opened the registration of communities, and this will allow them to work in this to work with this data, and with this access they will have a full opportunity to get all the necessary information. Please get to this because here you will have all the data related to the geospatial information. Unfortunately, we cannot go on with the questions and answers because we have time to start our next panel discussion. All the questions we have in chat we will relay to all the to the people who work on this or that issue. For us, it's important to understand how the legislation works on spatial planning. We were working on the legislation in parallel. We worked on the awareness raising of all the communities about spatial planning effort. We in many communities have been occupied. We understand that they have already done something in this regard, and for us it's important that communities, it's important for the communities to be active and actually to have time, to have possibility to submit their proposals. I'd like to thank all the panelists in this discussion. Would like you to have a smooth pass along our spatial planning efforts and to wish you all possible victories.
Сьогодні в Пісочинській громаді відбулись перші громадські обговорення комплексного плану просторового розвитку території громади.
Today, at the level of one of the community, we had a discussion. For us, it's important to understand that to what extent all these issues are clear for them. We understand that today every member of the community could participate in these discussions. Today we had discussion of the comprehensive spatial planning in the Kosichinska community. Actually, it was selected as the participant of the project, and we thank for us very important that these comprehensive plans could be developed at the level of communities. The current status is important, despite the fact that comprehensive spatial plan is not adopted. We understand that even in case it requires the expert's opinion, for us it's important to understand what resources could be invited for this purpose of spatial planning in order to support this effort. We understand that very often all the efforts taken in this program are important, and I hope that this pioneering effort of this community will be the good example for the other communities, because they will show what could be the outcome of such an effort.
Шановні учасники сьогоднішньої конференції,
Dear participants of our conference, we continue our panel discussions. I'd like to introduce our second panel discussion. I'm Roman Romanenko, expert on the asset management and land management. I represent Gavarla USAID activity, adaptation of legislation and the practices and spatial planning practices. I'd like to introduce the participants.
Yevgen Bernikov, advisor on the land legislations of the USAID Agrarian program, Dmitro Makarenko, deputy head of the State Service of Ukraine on geodetics, cartography and cadastre, Yevhen Plashenko, general director of the Directorate on the Spatial Planning of Territories, and Katerina Stepchuk, Spatial Planning expert of the USAID Guerrilla activity. I'd like to thank all the participants of this conference, and please, if you have any comment or questions, please get to your chats. I address all this to all participants who work in Facebook and YouTube. And the topics that have been voiced during the first panel discussion actually were very critical, but at the same time we understand that legislation approaches should be improved, and with this purpose we have organized a wide discussions under the USAID Agrarian Guerrilla activity, because the changes that are critical today, they will be also critical only in terms of reconstruction, but in terms of sustainable development of our communities. The floor is opened to Yevgen Bernikov and his advisor of the land legislation of the USAID Agro program.
Thank you, dear colleagues, dear participants. Within the legal field, actually, the spatial documentation concerning communities includes the complex approach, ecological, urban development, etc. So, the law of Ukraine 711 was adopted concerning the use of lands. Before it was adopted, our team made a very good work. A series of regulations were adopted concerning urban development and construction, the format of electronic documentation. So now we have it not in a paper form, but in electronic form. We have many regulations. We have classificators of target use, functional use. These data actually helped us to resolve certain architectural issues and the issues of the land use in general. I would like to mention the resolution of the Cabinet of the Ministers of Ukraine concerning subventions and the order concerning the structure of the documents. So this is very important because each object is reflected in these documents, and it has full description that reflect its status. So no pictures, no paper, but strict data on this or that object. Also, I would like to mention the law 2254 actually that was mentioned. It is very important for development of program documents. 2 years have passed since the adoption of the relevant law, and now we have experience. Now we have certain drawbacks, certain comments on it, of how it can be improved and how it can resolve the challenges that we have right now. So today we understand that we should renew and restore, rebuild our country. So we have worked out certain ideas concerning further amendments to the legislation as to further development. We can decide it in 4 main ways. The first one is to adapt the cadastre actually to the current purposes and renewal of the communities. And renewal means not only pertaining to the communities that suffered from war, but also other communities that have demographical programs, that have other problems. Secondly, those progressive ideas that are reflected in the law are very important. This is very important documentation that can resolve the problem in terms of cultural heritage, land surveying, cartographic programs, and my colleagues also mentioned many important issues that should be addressed. Concerning adaptation and renewal, I would like to draw your attention that the law 2254 actually envisaged the complex development of oblast regions and communities, and it has many regulations and provisions concerning renewal. But we understand that any program concerning rebuilding or target use should be included in the complex program, and it should be adjusted with the relevant provisions, legal provisions. It contains temporarily housing for IDPs. It concerns those communities who are going to build such housing for IDPs. Then, any planning documentation has the actual part, which reflects the current position, and the forecasting part. Of course, taking into account the situation that we have right now, we should foresee the necessity of the housing fund, its usability also. They should reflect demographic situation, and concerning project decisions, we should envisage what would happen in what sequence, what should be reconstructed, what should be rebuilt, what lands should be recultivated, what territories should be renewed. It concerns water objects, forests, whatever. So the relevant legislation should be adapted, of course, and the data from the cadastre should also be synchronized with such data. Certain restrictions should be imposed, probably, because we understand that we have a lot of mines. We should have demining activity. We have many military objects which are not reflected on the maps. Actually, we should have several restrictions that would regulate our activity and to decide on the issue on compensation for certain categories. Of course, we are very happy that the complex plans can allow us to plan the location of the land plots, and the complex plans would allow us to decide on future plans for us. And it is envisaged in the law on the state cadastre on water objects, for instance, on the objects of cultural heritage, and this concerns also the communities. There is no need to develop separate documentation on land if we have the complex plan, which can allow us to plan our activity. So this should be included into our future plans. This includes irrigation, forests, for instance, located on the territories of certain communities. All this should be taken into account. Concerning cartographic issues of cartography, this was the problem because unfortunately, in the current edition of the certain documents, the existence of the cartographic data was the precondition actually for the problems that we have. So some communities used their possibilities, some not. And this resolution was adopted in 2021. It was too late. So first of all, we had the cartographic basis in digital form, and also, and after that, we only started to talk about subventions. This is just a set of data. These data should be entered into the state cadastre, and in the process of development of complex plans, the additional data should be added for us to understand the procedure of how we should work with the subventions and plan our cartographic data. And concerning amendments to the legislation, actually, today we spoke about many programs and program documents that were adopted by our legislators, complex development, community development, building and construction. We should understand how it should be harmonized actually and how it can be used jointly. So these issues require our attention. Also, we spoke about the state interests. Of course, such issues should be fixed in our legislation, stipulated in our legislation, because they are very important. Because unfortunately, we have many programs. Each object is reflected and has description by a set of data. And of course, we should speak about accuracy of this, of all this data, and it should be accurately entered in the cadastre. Apart from this, we should understand the decision-making progress, because we are accustomed to the fact that, speaking about land plots, we register them in the cadastre. We understand that the land plot does exist, and only after that we adopt the decision concerning this land plot. If we speak about the legislation, the decision is taken, for instance, and only after this we enter the data in the land cadastre. This situation should be adequately considered, I do believe, and changed. Then the possibility to regulate the complex plans of building and construction norms. Certain regulations should be removed, of course. Concerning ecology, cultural heritage, they should be amended. The same concerns other technical issues concerning access to the state land cadastre. And after this, having amended the legislation, I do believe that we will change the situation. We should have complex, perfect document concerning strict plan concerning our activity. And all the data should be entered to the state cadastre and be accurate. Only after that it would be possible to attract investors, donors, and of course the issue of the documents is very important for us. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you, Mr. Evgen, for your concept, for your experience. It was very useful for us concerning development of the local communities. And speaking frankly, the complex plan is not about territories, but this is the complex approach to facilitate our processes. It is very essential for us to attract our authorities that would ensure and take part in the process of our planning. Many representatives are planning and actively supporting us and legislative amendments. So that is why it would be useful for us to use to Mr. Dmytro Makarenko, the Deputy Head of State Service for Ukraine, Geodesy, Cartography and Cadastre. Really, we participated actively.
State Cadastre participated actively in these activities. We had lots of meetings and discussions, and I'd like to voice that in future we plan work in the same line. And with regards to the State Cadastre activities, we work in a very tough environment, we understand, and actually when we get back to the previous panel, we realized that there were certain limitations in the operation of the State Cadastre. It's true we had some problems. I acknowledge this, but today the State Cadastre systems works as it should, and we realize that all these services actually are available that we had before, and as of the state on the second quarter of 2022, we have registered 220,000 land parcels, and actually we provided a number of certificates and experts with regard to the costs of the lands that has been registered, and so on and so forth. So it means that we operate, but we understand in what environment and conditions our personnel works. With regards to the comprehensive plans and introduction of the data in the State Cadastre, here I would like to say that it's necessary to single out some items that, for example, that the information based on the comprehensive plans could be introduced on the target use of the land parcel, functional zones, on melioration networks, and the composition of these melioration networks. The administrator of the State Cadastre system, they work on the operational functional, and today this will be operational based on the comprehensive plan. What should be said as well, that with regards to the access to the State Land Cadastre system, today we have certain limitations. This system operates without the access to the State Cadastre map, and also, the limited access is for the territories that are temporarily occupied or blocked, and this is done based on the order of the Minister of Reintegration. We understand that it is fully connected with the war, and administrator representatives, and they developed the functional of rather operational, and it allows to block not only the raions, but also they allow to block the information at the level of communities. We understand that today very many communities have the access to the State Cadastre services. Also, there is one more system, and I believe it's very important for the comprehensive plans, and it could be the source of the output battery, the system of national geospatial data. We understand the geoportal data it is today closed for some reasons that are fully clear for us, but the pilot project administrator implemented registration and verification of potential users from the local level, I mean the level of communities, and currently they submit their apps, applications, and they will be allowed the access to the information they need over the 2 weeks timing since the time this service was opened. More than 250 applications were met, and administrator works on the applications, and you will have the access to the data as well. Also, I'd like to thank for the invitation to this conference, and State Cadastre Agency is really ready for all the discussions on spatial planning. State Cadastre actually is very flexible in order to answer all the proposals and all the apps and requests. We understand that with this, we brought the services of the State Cadastre Agency closer to the communities. If you have the question today, in order to fill all your positions that could work at the vertical level, then probably this is very critical. It's very important because we understand that not always we could find is a sufficient number of specialists who actually will help with the spatial planning programs and plans preparation. For us, important to understand this, and with regards to the policy formation, the information was given by Yevgen. Yevgen, please comment on this presentation. What do you think about it? I'd like to say that the topics discussed during our first panel, it's true that we work closely on the legislation transformation, and we cannot address all the issues at a time, and because not always we agree with the concept presented by Evgeny Bashlik, because there are some issues that are disputable, and it's necessary always to remember that comprehensive spatial planning plan at the level of community, it's not only the land use documents, but it's a much higher level document. And what is sufficient for the work with regards to the day-to-day use in the community level. It's not sufficient for the development planning at the level of community. Also, Dennis mentioned this, but there are some doubts with regards on the quality of cartography data. And Yevgen mentioned that not all the data is accurate. And here also we had doubts how we may use data that not in full include the data, because if you take a large populated settlement, probably whether they don't have enough data in order to develop general urban development plans, and also there is another question and another issue. For us, it's important to take into account in one document comprehensive level. It's very important, but the reps of the territorial communities, they could object or agree to this. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's my vision. It's actually the issue of concern for us. And for us, it's important to take and implement what concerns environment, what concerns preservation of natural and cultural objects, and preservation of natural and cultural heritage. And here also, if we are not very serious about such issues, maybe we'll have more tough time when we are supposed to approve this document. So we understand that some historic localities, because we have some objects of culture that have been opened quite recently, and we understand that we have full understanding how we work, for example, with such issues when we will have to approve this comprehensive spatial planning documents. For us, it's important that to say that we have the urban development law, and also there are some other issues under it, underlying, and normative regulation and sub-laws are very important. And it has been voiced today, the issue of reconstruction programs, and also we should fully link it and tie it with the comprehensive planning. And for us, it's important we should simplify requirements for at the topography level, but why it is a disputable issue, every territory is different. For some territories, such an approach is sufficient, but there are some territories which need more data, and the data that could be taken from the cadastre are not sufficient. I hope that we will continue these discussions and we will get back to this topic and we will work closely on it. Our discussions with the USAID and other expert community reps is ongoing, and we realize fully that this should be implemented and adopted, and I hope very soon we will get the compromise solution. And for us, it's important to have the most speedy decisions in this regard concerning any territory of Ukraine. Thank you very much, Yevgena. This is the process. It's rather new, because here when we speak about the land documentation and spatial planning documentation, we are at the very beginning of this path. The question question is to Bashlik, Mr. Bashlik earlier was, what is spatial planning? Nobody had the understanding of this, but today people have a much deeper vision and they are more curious about all the details. We understand the expert community and should be invited as much as possible to the process, and they will look at the process from their angle, and I believe that it will be a success. From the very beginning, it was already voiced that we have a common object under the Agrarian guerrilla programs. It's important that actually they cover different spheres and legislation in legislative terms. For us, it's important to have a sort of a pioneering effort. And when we speak about the captive community, it's true, it's a pioneer implementation level of our spatial planning project implementation. And Mrs. Simchuk, she's opened the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our participants and colleagues who participate in this conference and members of our panel discussion. Our project Gavrila is directed to continue decentralization efforts actually and to continue reforms in the land sector. Following these purposes, I would like to draw your attention to the second purpose within the framework of the second component. Here I can say that implementing the original self-governance, we worked in three regions. Now we are extending the geography of our work. The second component has one of the priorities, that is to develop this spatial program, because this is the inalienable component of our development, of our component. This is not a self-purpose. This is the foundation, the cornerstone for the strategic planning for our local development. So the main component for such planning is the sustainable development. Under present conditions, sustainable development and the related components, economic, ecological components, are added by the spatial development at present. Taking this into account, we should take into account these aspects. Our state and our people of Ukraine actually have confirmed that there is a unity and integrity in the society, and we should care about our natural resources for future generations. We should use them rationally. Yevgen also told us that we should preserve our cultural heritage. Speaking about different communities, we can speak about development of architectural plans in order to preserve what we have. Also, the efficient spatial development ensures competitiveness between different regions. It was present before the war. Now we have certain disproportion, and of course communities are trying to compete for development, and this process should be harmonized in a proper way. And another component is security of our citizens who live in our communities. So this should be the basis for the support of our communities. I would like to say that spatial development is supported very efficiently. Our team of professionals is working on it. Our life has divided before the war and after the war, We started to conduct many training sessions, which were very effective. Also, 25 communities have prepared and approved the complex plans in the form of the task decision, which is rather difficult and envisages many analytical work, analytical component, and many annexes to such a decision. After the project, we increased our activity, and we do everything that we can in this direction. We conducted 18 training sessions on this topic. We extended the geography of our work. We are working not only in 7 regions, but in many others where we extend our, we share and disseminate our experience and are trying to amend the relevant legislation. Sometimes we are trying to analyze draft laws, actually, that were not even published, but we conducted trainings concerning their amending, for instance, on rent issues, food security, and many others. Today, we are trying to work further in this direction to conduct further training sessions to improve spatial development. At the same time, we are trying to react quickly to the challenges that we have, placement of IDPs, relocation of business, food security, provision of local budgets, and of course, in so doing, for instance, in Lviv administration, where they didn't know what to do in order to find an efficient tool for managerial decision-making process to solve demographical issues, how to find housing or reconstruct or rebuild housing for IDPs. Well, so we have elaborated informational system that was designed to support local self-government bodies and provide the relevant decisions for them. So this tool is very effective right now, and we had to make a certain kind of a hub that have 12 thematic topics of how to help local communities. We have certain achievements in this respect, and we have proofs that it really works, because we can even demonstrate another example of how the community can make certain achievement and attract funds from investors in order to build housing in its region by analyzing the needs of IDPs, taking into account that they had 32 families, they had no housing. The project is very dynamic, had wide range of possibilities, and so it is necessary to develop the detailed plan for the local building and construction documentation. As a result, we understood that the complex approach is necessary, and this is the proof that the spatial planning should be the cornerstone and the basis for our future development. Speaking plainly, our project supports 9 communities in spatial development now. We are at the stage of forming the task for development. We use the cascade, cascade method approach. A certain number of communities is attracted to our meetings and events. Other are coming to to accept our experience. Shatska territorial community was severely damaged by war, and we understand that we should relocate and host IDPs. They are unique because they are at the state border of Ukraine, because it is the neighboring region to Belarus that supports the aggressor. It also borders with our friends from Poland. So this community is a pilot one in our project, and it was mentioned today that subvention from 2020 fund, transitional subvention, was actually provided also to Shatska community. They have 95,000 for development. Before that time, we attracted youth for development of the business. On Tuesday, I returned from Shatska community, where actually there was a task developed on the 24th of February, and we reviewed what should be taken into account concerning land, concerning state border protection. So everything was taken into account, and at the final, right now we are at the final stage of the development of complex plan. At the same time, we are ready within the framework of our work with the 10 communities to include Kiptivska community, because in fact there was a trip by the head of the USA director Marat Krzyzewski and Gabriel Abraham, deputy head of the project, and other experts in order to assess the amount of damages actually in Shatska community and their chances to develop the plan for their development. And it would be very important for us, though the focus will be made on the after-war development. So we have determined the main task for us in order to implement this pilot project. So we should provide complex approach to ensure managerial decisions, efficient administrative decisions, taking into account economic effects, and using in this case using the tool of spatial development. Among other tasks, we can speak about, as we have mentioned today, the amendments to the legislation, and there is a discussion even on this case. So, of course, we would test these legislative initiatives. We would understand where there is a need of cartography changes and updates. Furthermore, together with our partners, USAID, Agro, we would also support this community, and we would implement this pilot project in close cooperation with Kiptivska community. Also, we are planning, since we have heard from the representatives of the community, that they have beautiful infrastructure objects, but they are not working because there is no security, there are no shelters. So this spatial development would enable to resolve this situation, and our purpose is to develop the complex plan of spatial development based on these needs concerning renewal and rebuilding of those who suffered. Yesterday we had support also concerning our cascade method in Kiptivska Hromada from Vladimir Volodymyrovich. for us to disseminate our experience and share our experience, not also before among the communities, but other people who are interested and other stakeholders. We have made the first steps. We visited the community, got acquainted with them, and had the roadmap of what should be done in order to achieve our purposes as an expert. We have analyzed the situation. Kiptevska community is not only a brand, but is a place that has good initiatives with regard to spatial development concerning land surveying, concerning and land use on the territory of this community. They are ready for reforms. They are ready to be the first comers, the pilots, to test the legislative initiatives in order to develop in the future. Also, we have determined the common expectations actually concerning the changes to come for us to realize this pilot project. And the positive aspect here is that Gavrila program would finance and provide expert support to our partners from Agro project with regard to implementation of this pilot project. So that is why I do believe that the testing of the legislation, the improvement of the practices that we have, we would start the pilot projects, the 10th project. You said Hoverla.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Thanks go to all the speakers in our second panel. And participants today get know what is the standing in at different levels. And we have already started this discussion, and we will continue these discussions. We have a good understanding how we will work with a captive community. And actually, we have many questions. Very many participants ask how they could join to the process of legislation preparation. And the first question goes to Evgen, how you plan amendments on public procurement law in order with regards to the comprehensive planning, because they should be considered as works, not services. Actually, today it's difficult to speak about financing and funding, and maybe you will inform us what are the initiatives at the level of the ministry. It's the issue. More work to be done for the follow-up discussions because we don't have a clear vision and now I cannot comment on it as by the time we get back to this discussion of the issue on financing, I hope we will be more ready. Currently, it's difficult for me to comment on it. The issue of works and services, it's, the issue when we speak about the comprehensive plan, but for us it's important to have the single unified approach based on the European and world practices, and it will be much easier for our financiers to comment on it and financial institutions. In order not to encounter this or that mistakes Yevgen with us. Yevgen Bernikov actually presented the concept. Whether you, Yevgen, comment changes with regards to the preparation of the general master plans on urban development, because for some populated settlements it's a general plan, and for some general master plans, for some populated settlements, it's only architectural planning. We realize that we have very different communities because we had a number of testing. The approach that has been taken to us, it is very suitable for very many communities. But we understand that in common work with the Gaverla activity, probably we'll have a much deeper insight on a circle of communities which should be are very specific, but we are ready to work in the current legislation frameworks. And next question goes to you. How, for example, those who are interested and how they can join the team that working on their government, Gaverla and agro effort, how the people could be invited and be engaged. I would like to highlight then when based on the elaborations we had, then we will write actually the norms of the legislation. No doubt prior to this there will be the wide discussions in order everyone will have a common understanding what actually will be written in the law. No doubt, because we will have a trial of these legislation norms on the basis of the captive community, and we will, after that, after this practical implementation of these norms, we will have a better vision what works and what doesn't work. And we have our contacts of the projects, and there is open access to this data. Comprehensive plan, it's the documentation, it's not the strategy, it's not a clear-cut engineering document that fully answers all the questions with the high accuracy and precision. And we understand that for us, it's very important how all this will be included in the state cadastre data. But Dmitry, do you plan that when the data from the comprehensive plan actually will be introduced in the state cadastre? Actually, for us, it's important how this or that object data will be introduced in the state cadastre. I'd like to mention that the formation of the state cadastre as a system, it has been taking place for a long time, and this system was launched in 2013 from the 1st of January, and the system sometimes cannot catch up for all the changes, innovations that we have in the system. Frankly speaking, I understand that today we develop the functional basis, and after that, thanks to it, we will have the chance to introduce the comprehensive planning data to be introduced in the state cadastre. Now, currently, it's difficult to say how exactly it will work. First of all, we should have a sort of a practical trial of this approach, and then based on the findings and conclusions made on this trial, then we will actually adopt the final decision. And also we understand that actually when implementing this pilot project, we will have the full chance to answer these questions as well. All we are ready today actually to work on it. We understand this is a very important project and communities ask us what will be the first steps for the successful engagement of communities in this process, because we understand what is the formal participation and what is the real participation. And we realize that when local government power develops this or that plan, how it could be implemented, what first steps to be taken at the level of the community in order to have a successful development of spatial plans. We understand that very many communities are very thankful because very many communities are ready for the preparation of spatial plans, and they are ready to prepare the comprehensive plans. For us, it's important to have a good understanding at the level of communities that this will be a very good instrument in order to overcome the corruption. And it is a very good indicator for the people in the communities. First of all, before we start work on preparation of the comprehensive spatial plan, we should build up the community level team, not the architect, not the engineer should work. Local power should be fully engaged. We understand the architect could take a lead in the process, and land survey survey specialist also should be in a team. So it should be the team that will compose very proficient specialists. And for us, like in Shatska community, actually, we engage the people who have a long experience working on these issues. And actually, planning should be the very first phases, but earlier it was very formal attitude to all this, not practical. And you know, sometimes they started construction of this or that object, and people actually were not happy with it, but nothing was done at the level of planning. Also, all the people in the community, they are fully informed. We invite different categories of population from community for the discussion groups when we discuss this or that issue. We have Shatska community, it's a community of 30 lakes. We understand that actually tourism could be much promoted on this, and we realize, but comprehensive approach in order to invite more tourists, we should support it with the comprehensive effort. And we realize when people in the community have a good understanding what is done, for what purpose, what objectives to be met, then people are much easier engaged in the process. No doubt that all these efforts on comprehensive spatial plans, preparations need funding, and all this will allow communities to have more prosperous development. We will thank our panelists for the answers given to our participants. We understand that in the framework of our conference, it's very difficult to cover all the issues. That is, comprehensive spatial planning is very critical, and there is a good understanding at the level of a community how many benefits it will give to the communities, because many resources could be invited, and the highest resource are people. People have their vision for the future. What is their vision now for the future work and employment and engagement of the people in the community is so very critical. Success actually much depends on the people, because development could be ensured by the people. All these principles are supported by Gaverla and Agro programs. People in the communities give a full support to the implementation of these two activities at the level of communities. They are ready to be engaged in all the activities that are covered under these programs in order to get a good understanding what is the response of communities on all these efforts. I offer you to see this video.
Одним із
At present, one of the tasks and challenges is to develop a spatial development plan for our community. This is a new kind of documentation on land surveying, on building, which are combined in a single document. This is a tool for us to see the future development of our community and to document and implement in future our plans. We have gathered together part of our community in order to determine what we want actually and where to go. The development of such a plan of complex development is a very important step for us, which gives us hope and incentives for the better future, for us to find new directions of development, for us to satisfy the needs of our community. We need to efficiently use the resources of the community for the generations that to come would live a constructive life in this world. So, dear participants of the conference, let's return to online format. We hope that this video inspired you, and using this chance, I would like to announce the ceremony of the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding on the Averla project of Kiptivska community for the Spatial development in Chernigiv region. And the floor is given to Mr. Gabriel Abraham, head of the project. Please.
Mr. Kuchma, dear colleagues, I'm very glad to welcome Kipti municipality to the Hoverla family. With the signing of the document, the MOU, we endorse our mutual commitment to completing the spatial planning documentation. I am reassured by Mr. Kuchma's engagement with Hoverla on this activity, but also by the prospect that this will serve as inspiration and guidance to other communities. Mr. Kuchma, I am confident that the result of our partnership will be visible to all the residents of your municipality as well. Thank you very much.
Дякую, пане Габріель. І також до слова запрошую.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. Now the floor is given to our colleague, dear partners, dear colleagues. Speak into the mic, please. Dear colleagues, dear partners, Mr. Gabriel. Yesterday, we had a chance to get acquainted with each other and to discuss our future steps concerning implementation of the project. This is a very important step for us to develop not only Kiptivska community, but many other communities. It would be a good example for them, a good incentive for them, for all communities to understand what spatial planning is and how it would be effective and how it would impact the development of communities. This is a long-term project which is expected for long period of time. I do believe that our work would be fruitful and would bring good results and would serve as a good example for others. Thank you. So the official ceremony of signing of the Memorandum of Understanding is opened actually, so please. We do believe that this would be the cornerstone of our future work, and our success would be resting on this document. Thank you very much. So, it was successful, and we still have a long way to go, hard way, but a lot depends on the community, on people who will be working within the framework of the project. In order to finalize our meeting, I would like to give the floor to my colleagues, Sergei Kubach and Katerina Stepchuk. On behalf of USAID Agro, I would like to congratulate Hoverla project and Kiptivska community with this signing of the memorandum. On my behalf, I would guarantee that our team would do everything to elaborate the draft law, to test it on the territory of Kiptivska community, for it to be successful and be a good example for others. We are very proud to participate in this work, and we have a commitment to work as a one team, joint team. As a result of our conference, I would like to say that the conference was very successful. First of all, I would like to thank you for your support for amending the legislation concerning spatial planning. It is very important for us, and we do feel our commitments and liabilities to do it in a way that it would be quick and efficient. Secondly, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we have mentioned many times that during the time of transition, martial law, military time, when the legislation is not working very efficiently, it is very essential for us to prevent chaos in land issues, because we had the practice of such risks, we face such challenges, and if we can avoid such risks and such challenges, escape them, then of course Ukraine will become one of the best countries in Ukraine with regard to democratic standards, and all donors will compete to come to Ukraine and work here. These changes would be made only if we work together, two projects and Kiptevska community as well. So that is why I'm very proud, and I wish you good luck. And so I do everything will be okay. I would like also to say a few words, final words. Each community level of legislation would require individual approach concerning planning of its territory, concerning developing some tasks. That is why our project would continue to support communities and territories in that region to amend and improve the legislation concerning spatial development. And I do agree with my colleague that today's conference was very positive and inspiring for us. We understand the challenges that we have on our difficult way, and of course we will do everything we can to provide support, because we represent two projects of the USAID, Agro and Gavarla, and this is the prerequisite for our success. Today's event was a good incentive for us and prerequisite for success, and we are counting on the support coming from the central authorities in order to test new amendments that would facilitate our development. And all communities should make plans despite any challenges, despite any problems, to plan your renewal during the time afterward, after our victory. So I support my colleague. So good luck. So our conference is over. Let's call it a day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.